There's something about this season, yeah? So at the very least, it's a season of light. Most of you may already know the history, but one of the reasons why they decided to celebrate Christmas, Jesus' birth, at this time of year is because this was the most powerful of the pagan holidays, so they wanted to rival it a little bit. So to bring in the pagans into Christianity, so they had Jesus' birth celebrated on December 25th, 4 days after the winter solstice. And Hanukkah is not a major Jewish holiday, but has become a major Jewish holiday just because of the time of year in which it falls. Because it's a time to celebrate the light in the midst of the darkness, in the silent night. Yogananda talks about the reason we have the darkness is to make us turn inwardly to the light, to stop looking outward. We get distracted by all the stuff happening out there, but this is a time to go into our caves, to go inside and nurture that light within. So the talk tonight, oh, by the way, I don't know what made me think of it, but isn't this beautiful? It is fantastic. Love it. It's beautiful, our decorating committee. And we had a foundations class. She did that for her final project, a glass lighthouse. Made that. Isn't that beautiful? We are so blessed. So the topic for today is the foundation. The theme for the month is Leaders of Light, and the topic for today is the foundation, be a lighthouse. So the first thing for us to know is that we're all lighthouses. And that's an actual literal truth, that we are the center. Each and every one of us is the vortex of all the light of the universe. One of the things sometimes I see a lot as people are writing prayers or talking about prayers is we're a part of God. Like there's this big God and we're just a tiny part. But that's a time and spatial reference that doesn't truly understand in something that the linear mind has a hard time grasping, but that in every moment of time and space contains all that God is, not just a part of God. So that means the entire cosmos is actually within us. What really helped me understand this was when Ken Wilber was talking about when we dream, we're one person dreaming, but we have dreams of everything. We can have dreams of multiple people, time, space. Nothing is limited, and yet we're only one person dreaming it, and yet all those figures, all those images are within us. And that's this idea that we're each this vortex. We have the entire cosmos being birthed in us. I have a friend who was studying with a spiritual teacher from Africa. And he came here and he was meeting with people one-on-one. This is Brother Ishmael Tete. And people were asking for all sorts of healings. But she came to him and she said, all I want is to know God. That's all I want. And he took her into this deep meditation, and she said it was the most extraordinary experience where she closed her eyes and suddenly the entire cosmos was being birthed through her. That she just had the experience of being this divine feminine presence as everything was just being birthed. Cosmos, galaxies, billions and billions of stars. It's all within us. So that's the first thing to know about yourself, is that you are literally a lighthouse of God. And not because of anything you do, not because you're special, not because you made anything happen, but just by being who you are a lighthouse of God. And so in that, we have to take care of our lighthouses. Jack, Julian, and I were very blessed. This past Thanksgiving, Emily and Jeff Fisher let us stay at their timeshare, and it was just an incredible, blessed time to have that time of peace, and we're very, 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 very grateful to you. And while I was there, I happened to read a book that someone had recommended to me 2 years ago, and it looked depressing, so I didn't read it, but somehow I just thought, well, I'll read it while I'm here, because it has a picture of a lighthouse. I'm a sucker now. It's like, oh, it's got a lighthouse, I'll read it. It's a fiction book, and it's called The Light Between Oceans. And it's about a lighthouse keeper. He took care of a lighthouse on the island of Janus, Janus, which is off the coast of Western Australia. So he was the only one on this island, and it was to keep all the ships, obviously, from cramming into the island. And he lived there by himself before he got married. And what I loved is I started underlining. I'm like, oh, good, a book I don't have to underline. But then I started underlining because it was like how you care for a lighthouse. You have to take care of the lighthouse. That was his thing, take care of the lighthouse. Pay attention to it. It needs attention. And then there was this line, and you could tell, he said that the apparatus responded to the attention. That, when we start taking care of ourselves, that inner light within us responds. It actually starts to be more activated, be more clear. The more we purify and clean the windows of our consciousness, clean our agendas and start letting things go and becoming more and more of a transparency of light, it responds. Take care of your lighthouse. You are each this lighthouse. The way Jesus put it is keep your eye single so your whole body may be full of light. So Yogananda says what Jesus meant, I don't know if he did or not, but this is what Yogananda says. That what Jesus meant was the third eye, which is our sixth chakra, which is the eye of vision. And actually Yogananda refers to this eye as the Christ light, because when we look through that light, there's no borders, it's just light. And so all of Yogananda's meditations are about focusing up on the third eye. You can actually start with breathing through the third eye and then just keeping your eyes focused on that, because it knows no walls. There's no separation, there's no duality. The two eyes are duality, the single eye is single. That the lighthouse is a single light, actually. And the idea is that we need to nurture that light within us to keep our eye single by keeping our eye on the infinite and not on the finite. To keep our eye on the infinite nature of who and what we are and not on those limited aspects of ourselves. It's very important to do shadow work. And we've talked about that before. But we don't want to get so focused on shadow work where we're trying to be so authentic with our shadow that we're putting so much attention on that's still the finite. When we turn on the light, the dark dispels. It disappears. Focus continue to nurture that light, and everything starts to heal and to shift. Keep thy eye single. Right now, there's only light. Everything is made up of light. Keep our eye and attention on that within, and then as we do it within, just like in the lighthouse, then we see it 360 degrees in every direction that we go. It's inward and outward. What's interesting is he also says that if he goes up into the lighthouse in the daytime, there's curtains, because the light is so intense that he said everything would explode. It would break apart or melt. So I can't say it was explode or melt. But the point is it needed a protection from the light from so intense. And that's an actual truth, too, that this light is so intense, that most of us couldn't handle living in a sustained way in the infinite oceanic light that is the absolute essence of who and what we are. So our role here on this world is to continue to clear off that light and to raise our vibration so we can hold and become a greater and greater emanation of light, that we can sustain it. I remember having this one experience where it was after a workshop, and it was just, I went into bliss after this workshop, which I'll talk about in a minute, and it was for 3 days just in this bliss, and I remember the moment it just shut down again. It's like to actually integrate it into my life was too much. So as long as I kept sort of a little bit separate and was in this energy, it was great, but the moment I started stepping back into my life, whoop, I came in because it was too much. I couldn't sustain it. And that's what we're here to do, is to continue all those the workshops that we're doing, the yoga classes you go to, Qigong, Reiki, all the stuff that we do, meditation, prayer, all of it is to keep up-leveling our consciousness so we can start to sustain this light and emanate it and radiate it more and more. To be the lighthouse. We are the lighthouse, and we need to take care of the lighthouse. There was this beautiful line, and he said, when it all comes down to it, when I remember who I am, I just remember I only have one job: to keep the light burning. To keep the light burning. That's what we're here to do. Keep the light burning. And then he talks about at one point, he said there's days when that ocean isn't even an ocean. It's so angry and violent, and it's whipping around and tearing away at the cliffs and biting up the cliffs. I don't even recognize it. And those are the times where he tends to the light more. He stays up all night tending to the light. He doesn't get lost in the drama of the ocean and starts focusing on, wow, that's a horrible thing happening. He stays focused on the light, nurturing the light. And that's a reminder to us. So when I say take care of the lighthouse, take care of your light, that means not only when the times are good, just your daily spiritual practices, but when things are the most difficult is when often, I think it's Deepak Chopra who has this quote. Somebody has this quote where when it gets really busy, when your life really gets tough, like 20 minutes is a perfect time, but when it gets really tough and you have no time to meditate is when you should be meditating an hour. That actually, when things are the worst, when things are the most busy, when the things are the most stressful, when your anger is the most, or your sadness, or whatever that darkness is, when that's the most is when the tending to the light has to increase. And that's not just for us individually in our life as we see it in the world happening around us. You know, with all the violence that is happening and there's so much right now about the gun violence and things being said by political candidates of just that seems so dark and seems so limited. And I get so frustrated. I try not to, but I do. So just to keep saying, the light, I got to hold to the light. I got to keep that light burning. I got to keep that light burning in me and sing it in everybody, even when their words or their actions do not seem light-oriented. I have to keep that light burning because that is that which is eternal, that which is infinite. It is real. I'm not just making it up in my head. It's real. So I have to hold to that, keep to that light. When that anger, when that ocean becomes so angry that we don't even recognize it as an ocean anymore, that's when we tend to the light the most. That's when he stayed up all night taking care of the lighthouse. And finally, I just want to say why we do this. Why the light? We had a wonderful, interesting discussion on email with the board about, we're sending out pledge letters and saying, who are we? What are we about as a community? And for me, it's all about becoming the light. And there was some question of why didn't I use the word God in the God's Lighthouse? You know, why did I was just talking about light and didn't include the word God or spirit? First of all, let me just say I love the word God. As you know, if you come here on Sundays, I use it quite often. Bless you. And but the thing with God, the word God, is it's abstract. If I say, have an experience of God, what does that mean? So usually when we say God, we have to qualify it. We say, it's light, it's love, it's peace, it's harmony, it's grace, it's abundance, it's freedom, it's spaciousness. There's all sorts of things that we use to describe God because God itself is an abstract concept. And not only is it an abstract concept, it's an abstract concept of the Judeo-Christian world. It has edges to it. So Hindus don't, well, they are more and more, but Hindus generally don't use the word God. Buddhists don't use the word God. Muslims don't use the word God. Allah, Brahma, the void, the ground of all being, the suchness of all being, they all use different language. So the moment I say God, I feel like there's edges. So though I am comfortable as part of my own heritage that feels very at home for me, what I recognize is what I see this community as and what I see my life to be about is a life without edges. And when we say light, that is not an abstract concept. That's something we've all experienced. We experience it now. There's all types of lights and there's all colors of light. And so if we say be the light, that's an actual something we can visualize and it's real. I was thinking, it wasn't actually even until I was thinking about this talk that I realized that almost all of my mystical experiences have been light. They were far more about light than anything else. So the experience I've shared before about becoming one with the Christ when I was a child, it was through loving baby Jesus, but when that light grew, it wasn't a baby, it wasn't a form, it wasn't a name called Jesus, it wasn't even the Christ, it was just light and love. And it immersed me, and it immersed all life. It was boundless, it had no edges, it had no concepts, it didn't say this is what I am and nothing else. It was just edgeless, boundless, borderless love and light. That it was unlimited. And in fact, it had such an impact on me as a kid that when I would I wanted more of it, so I was looking around for it, and I go to these Bible studies, and they start studying the Bible. I'm like, no, that's not it at all. It's just that Jesus, he's not very nice. I don't like him. It's always like saying people are going to Satan if they don't do this. And I'm like, no. That's because When you actually experience this light, when we experience this light, we start to see that it doesn't have all these boundaries, that human beings put all these boundaries. And so though I love the word God, when I say it out loud, for some people may have a negative view of God. There may be walls that show up, but in light, we can continue to cultivate and nurture it. I've experienced light that it speaks to me, it gives me guidance, it tells me just in words, and sometimes it's just light. It's living and it's intelligent and it loves. But it has no boundaries and it has no edges. And he talks about that when he's up in the lighthouse. The character name is Tom. That he says when he's up there, he was right in the Western Australia, there's 2 oceans. Actually, Julian has now clarified that it's an ocean and a sea now. They've changed that. But back in, this story takes place back in World War I, and right after World War I, and he said there's 2 oceans, and he had just come out of World War I, and he said people fight over these boundaries. They lose lives over just this is a little bit more mine or theirs, and it's vicious and it's violent. And he said, when you're up here and there's 2 oceans, there's no place where one ocean ends and another ocean begins. You can't see edges. And he goes, I just sit up there and everything is edgeless. There's all these boundaries and labels that we put, but when you're just sitting up in the light, it's all one. How awesome is that? And that's what we're here to do, is to know the oneness and the concepts and the words. They're beautiful, but sometimes they can limit us. I will still use the word God. It's not that I won't, but I also have to be conscious in my own training to not let myself be limited by concepts and have the living reality. And that's sort of the point that I want to make here, that we're all lighthouses. We keep that eye single to have the experience and nurture light, because what we want more than anything is to be the primary source, to know that light for ourselves directly, to know that when I'm saying you really are a lighthouse being, the cosmos really is in you, and to nurture that, to actually start experiencing the light at least at the very level of imagination. When you all probably remember when you were in school, high school, college, when we wrote papers, and you wrote research papers, you had primary sources and secondary sources. Secondary sources were people who were writing about what other experimenters have done and writing their thoughts and ideas about it. Primary sources was the person who actually was doing the experiments and was actually having the thoughts and ideas. And I remember when I was going through ministerial school, I came to the conclusion I wanted to be a primary minister. Use primary source first and foremost. That I can reference what other people teach. I can reference and learn from that, but ultimately my own personal authority has to come from what I know for myself, what I know, what I've experienced, because that's what's true for me. And so light, what I started being with is like every time I've had a mystical experience, it's been with light. That's what's true for me. And and I didn't even know I did it. We were talking about this in class one time. And I realized I do it and I never talk about it, is I don't wait for a mystical experience. I create, I just imagine light around people, or for protection. I do it with Julian all the time. I just take a moment to see them all covered in light, safe, protected, move them out into the world. That this light is real. Right in this room, there's this incredible light. We just don't have eyes to see it yet. But we use our imagination and start practicing seeing the light in everybody and seeing the light in ourselves. Start with your own lighthouse. Just practicing imagining yourself as full of light. Do that on a daily basis. Nurture that light. And when the storms get dark, practice even more seeing yourself in this pure light in the midst of this storm, in this raging storm. Imagine everything that's happening, light. Practice seeing the light, and you're actually seeing what is real. You're actually seeing what is underneath all this stuff. You're seeing with that single eye, because we normally see with the duality, 2 eyes. See with the single eye. You are a lighthouse. That light gets it through a prism, and it goes through one stream and circles around. That's what makes it so strong and powerful. That's what the single eye does. It makes that light really strong. But we want to know this light for ourselves. We don't just want, that's what I was going to bring back. The workshop that I went to where I was all blissed out. It was only for an hour. I didn't know anybody in the workshop. It was an Andrew Cohen workshop, and he does this work a lot, so it wasn't, there was a lot of mastery by the facilitators. But we were asked to do 3 things. We were given a paragraph. I swear, he said he wrote it. I swear it came from Ernest Holmes. It was exact Ernest Holmes paragraph. And he said, here was the rules. We had to talk about the paragraph. We were not allowed to reference anything we've ever read. We were not allowed to reference anything we've thought about or experienced in the past. It had to be right now. And we had to speak as the oneness when we spoke. So speak from that God within light in this moment, right now. No reference to the past, no reference to books, what other people have said, just only what's arising now. And it was really hard. And so by the way, we didn't do any opening prayer. We didn't do any meditation. It was all open eye with 30 people I barely didn't know. We sat in a circle, and people started talking, and it was hard. He kept bringing it back. No, you just referenced a book, or you're talking about an old idea. Stay in the present. And so it was weird. It's like, how do you talk about something right now? And as it progressed, and it only went on for an hour, just this energy started, because we were fully present to the light now, speaking as the light now, not referencing anything else. It was direct experience right now. What do I know right now in this moment? How can I speak from that place of oneness right now? Not tomorrow, not when I'm enlightened. Right now, if I was speaking as oneness, how would I speak? How would I live? How would I breathe? How would I share and receive other people's wisdom? And suddenly the energy was flying around the room, just, and that's when I started walking around for 3 days, just totally blissed out. Just by speaking from oneness, that direct experience. Being a lighthouse, keep your eye signal. Take care of your lighthouse. Single-eyed attention. Take care of your lighthouse. We have one job, is to keep that light burning. Keep that light burning. And that's when we know the light directly, first-person experience. That becomes more powerful and more radiant than all the books that we can quote in the world or all the people we can quote, is our own direct knowing. That's what we are here to be. That's what I believe is the power of this community. That's what I believe Reverend Gregory experienced last week, because so many of you are so actively participating in your own spiritual practices, in your own way of life, that when he came, he felt this people who are really embodying light. So I'm going to end with my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes. It's by St. Francis of Assisi. And he used the word gospel. I'm going to use the word gospel, but what the word gospel means is good news. Because that's what I think we're about, is the good news, which is that we're all the lighthouses. We're all the kingdom of God. So he said to his disciples, go out and preach the gospel. Go out and preach the gospel. And if you must, use words.